FlexiProject is a tool that streamlines work at the project portfolio level, project management, and daily operational work. In this video, I would like to introduce you more broadly to our project management and project portfolio system, FlexiProject, and show you how it works in practice using real project examples. The system is a web application that operates in the cloud, but can also be installed on your own servers. What you see now is the main screen of the system, currently displaying the list of projects. I am currently logged in as a user with a full license, which includes admin permissions. This is the main window that appears, showing our project database for the entire company. This view is customizable. We can categorize these projects using various indicators such as project stage, assigned project manager, project category, and other elements that can be defined in the system settings. In this example, I've added custom project fields such as strategic pillar, project category, and deployment countries. Here, I have collected all the most important distinguishing features of the projects. Once I have defined and completed them, I am able to group the projects. This allows me to customize how the projects are displayed in the list. I can choose which key characteristics are visible by showing or hiding specific elements relevant to each project, simply by adjusting the column settings. Additionally, I can filter the list based on specific values to quickly find the projects I'm looking for. From this view, I can navigate to the Templates tab. Here, I can create project templates, meaning entire projects or project components that are repeatable. This allows me to create full projects using a template without having to build them task by task from scratch. I can also copy templates into existing projects, adding them to already defined tasks and structures. I use project templates to import key schedule components such as tasks, milestones, task owners, and durations defined in working days. Templates also allow me to bring in predefined elements like budget components, expenses, and revenues, project risks, and products. Thanks to this, our organization can add projects more efficiently when they are fully or partially repetitive and build a standard for projects that share these repeatable elements. This creates consistency in products, risks, and budgets across projects. If I go back to my project list, I can also create programs, groups of projects whose schedules are interconnected. I use this option when I want to build a single schedule for multiple different projects and manage it all from one place. Thanks to this, if I have, as shown in the example on screen, 5 projects that are closely linked, where some tasks in one project depend on tasks in another, I can create a Gantt chart with a schedule that includes dependencies between these projects or between specific phases within them. If we look at our organization from a higher-level perspective, beyond just project execution, FlexiProject supports more effective management of both individual projects and groups of related projects. Let's go back to our project list, where we can add new projects. When I want to create a new project, I can either build it from scratch or, as we've seen, use a project template. Additionally, I can add projects by importing data from Excel or Microsoft Project. This functionality makes it much easier to get started with the system, especially since many companies that don't yet use a dedicated project management solution still manage their projects in Excel. With FlexiProject, we can easily transfer those Excel files into the system. Now let's move on to a sample project. The first screen I see is the schedule view. Here we can create the different phases of the project, as well as tasks, subtasks, and milestones, building the full structure of the project schedule. The individual components of the schedule, or entire groups of tasks, can be assigned to specific members of the project team. We can define start and end dates, view task connections with related budget items, risks, or products, and also display or add additional information, such as which department is responsible for completing a given task. If I switch to the Gantt chart view, we can see arrows that indicate the dependencies between the different elements of the schedule. For example, if a task depends on another task, or if there needs to be a gap of several days between the end of one task and the start of the next, we are able to set these kinds of dependencies between schedule elements. We can create dependencies at the task, subtask, or phase level to highlight the sequential flow of work. Let's move on and talk about daily task management. When tasks are assigned to team members, they automatically appear on their to-do lists. This list is visible to every system user on the left-hand side under Tasks. When I go to this tab, I will see my project and operational tasks. I already have quite a lot of work from several different projects. This tab helps each employee manage their own tasks more easily because it shows all the tasks they need to complete, so everyone knows exactly what they should be working on. I can also create new tasks, and by creating new tasks, I create a task that is not assigned to any project. It is an operational task that facilitates my own work, or, for example, a task that I want to delegate to other people. As we know, some operational tasks can be repetitive. There is the option to create recurring tasks, such as a cross-department coordination meeting, which takes place every 10 days, meaning this meeting is scheduled to occur once every 10 days. If I assign an employee to a task, they will receive an email notification, if this option is enabled in their settings, as well as an in-app notification. This section displays all notifications related to my tasks and other activities within the system. From the schedule view, I can of course define the duration of tasks, their start dates, and end dates. If I switch to the Gantt chart, I can also see detailed information about resource allocation within my project team. That is, how much time my team members will spend on this project, and how much of their time is already occupied by other projects. This means that in this table, I can view resource allocation on a weekly or monthly basis. Let's choose the monthly view since it's the most readable. In this view, I can see the resource load, which reflects the workload of employees involved in the project. For example, I can identify overloads in a given month when an employee has too many tasks across this and other projects. This allows me to manage my resources more effectively. What you see here is the resource load at the project level. However, at the system-wide level, resource allocation is visible in the Resources tab on the left side. Here, I can check the resource allocations of each employee across the entire organization for a selected period. With FlexiProject, you can track and manage your employees' workload across the entire organization. If I look into the details of my employees' workload, I can see how their tasks from different projects are distributed across days, which specific tasks contribute to their overall workload, and the total hours allocated, as the table displays the sums of hours. I can switch between weekly and monthly views to manage my resources effectively and also specify the availability of each employee from this level. For example, if they are on holiday or sick, I can enter this information into the system, which will impact task completion times. From here, I can also adjust their availability if they are only available for half a day or a few hours on certain days. In the FlexiProject system, users can also log their working hours, giving us insight into exactly what they worked on during a given period. By right-clicking, I can add work time along with the number of hours worked, the date, and a comment. If I go into a specific project, the logged work time information appears in the Work Time tab. Similarly to resources, the total logged work time across the entire company is available in the Work Time tab in the left-hand menu. Here, in this tab, I can see a list of what a given user has worked on. In this case, I'm viewing the tasks of Daniel Lebert, but of course, I can switch the view to another user, seeing how many hours they worked, on which day, in which project, and on which task. I can also customize the view of this list. For example, I have the option to group the list by project to see exactly how my employee, name, has spent their time across different projects. Now let's return to our project and move back to the Schedule tab. If I go into the Gantt chart view, I can see here. Maybe I'll switch to a weekly view, that the elements are fully configurable. This means I can adjust the duration of specific tasks by dragging them directly on the schedule. And if I have defined dependencies, they will adjust accordingly to these changes. For example, if I move just one task on my schedule, we can see that the entire phase's duration adjusts accordingly. Dependencies are also recalculated, preserving any previously set parameters, such as a fixed lag, if they were defined. I can change the schedule view. For instance, not to display resource information and instead show the critical path, or display the baseline plan. We can also see deviations between the actual schedule and the approved plan, the baseline plan. Now let's move to the Budget tab in My Project. This part of the system allows us to display all the costs and revenues planned for the project. We can group them by custom categories, add dates that are either independent or linked to schedule elements, and specify exact amounts. As you can see, there's information here about the baseline, the original budget that was previously approved. So, if the current budget differs from the approved budget, we can clearly show the difference and its amount, which is marked here in red. This makes it easy for us to track any budget deviations and monitor all changes. Each expense can be properly described. We can add details about the cost, such as whether it is CapEx or OpEx, the name of the supplier, document number, for instance, an invoice, and even attach additional documents. Additionally, we can include a more detailed text description of the budget item. Let's switch the view from the list to the timeline. In the Timeline tab, we can see how our expenses are distributed over time and how they progress, for example, in a monthly, quarterly, or yearly view. This provides us with an intuitive breakdown of project costs across the upcoming months, clear and informative. We can also display important information about budget deviations here. The next tab is the Risks tab, which gathers all the risks related to the project. We can properly describe such risks by adding information about their status, probability, impact, the person responsible for the risk category, and even link them to specific schedule elements. The description section allows us to add an action plan, explain what the risk involves, and specify its impact on the budget, schedule, or overall project outcome. We can also attach files and add comments. This module allows us to manage risks effectively in our projects, helping to minimize risks and improve workflow. If we go to the Products tab, we see the products, meaning the deliverables or documents important to our project that we produce during its course. These could be, for example, a process map, as in my example project. Products can also be linked to schedule elements, such as tasks. If I go into a specific product, I can add additional information, such as best practices for creating that product, or, for example, link it to elements on the schedule. Thanks to this module, we are able to effectively manage the products created during our project. Let's move on to the next tab, which helps us evaluate our projects. The Scoring tab allows us to assess the project based on previously defined indicators. Thanks to this, we can determine the attractiveness of a given project based on key indicators important to us. We can track this evaluation over time, and at the project portfolio level, compare the scores of different projects to easily assess and prioritize them. By working in the system, we can define the indicators used to evaluate projects and assign people responsible for those evaluations. Moving on, we have the Project Charter tab, which allows us to effectively manage project documentation, such as the Project Initiation Charter, Project Closure Charter, or any other related documents. If I open a project charter, I have defined information here regarding the schedule, budget, and any other important details that should be included in such a document, whether as text fields or data fields, depending on the adopted project management methodology. Importantly, I am able to create such a project charter template in the Project Charters tab, in the PMO tab, where I define what should appear on such a project charter. A significant portion of the information in the project charter can be automatically pulled from various parts of the system, such as project details, schedule, or budget, while other sections will be descriptive fields, like the scope of the project or others aligned with our methodology. Every project charter should be approved. When I approve a project charter within my project, I can set up approval workflows, called acceptance paths in our system, tailored to my organization. After accepting the project charter, including its schedule and budget elements, I can create a new baseline, the official binding baseline plan for the project. If such a project has an approved baseline plan, any deviations, whether in the schedule or budget, will be clearly visible as differences. This allows me to easily manage changes in the project and track any discrepancies. This is crucial in project management, as it helps identify when deviations occur and enables effective control over them. To improve internal team communication, which directly supports effective project execution, We also have a built-in chat to communicate with other team members. For example, by tagging specific people, sharing links, or adding graphics and other attachments. This helps us stay aligned and react quickly to changes or challenges. In the Reviews tab, on the other hand, we can enter information related to project reviews, such as status updates, meeting notes, or evaluation summaries. That means we can use reviews as regular reports on what is happening in our projects. If I go here to the PMO and Reviews tab, I am able, as an administrator, to create new project reviews that will aggregate data concerning specific projects on a given date. If I enter such a review, I see the elements, projects that are in this review, as well as basic information about the status of these projects, what their condition is, meaning how the achievement of milestones looks. Of course, I can freely adjust these fields so that the information presented in the project review meets my needs. Additionally, I'm able to create a graphical summary of such a review, for example, by adding relevant charts, risk matrices, or status indicators for all projects covered by the review. This panel allows us to present project review data in a clear and visually attractive way, which greatly supports communication with stakeholders and decision-makers. If I open a specific project review, I can see the information entered by the project manager. For example, what still needs to be completed, which decisions are pending, which ones have already been made, or, for instance, a brief description of how the schedule is being implemented. This tab we see here, just like the Project Charter tab, is also based on a predefined review template that we can create ourselves. We can have multiple templates, as it's easy to imagine that strategic projects will follow a different review structure than, for example, more operational or production-focused projects. If I go into a sample project review form, just like with the project charter, I can define what kind of information the project manager should fill in. If I want to manage projects on a higher level, we have the Project Portfolios tab. Let's now go to the Project Portfolios section in my project, where I can create and manage various project portfolios. For example, a strategic portfolio contains projects that achieve the strategic goals of my organization, and I see here a collective summary of my projects in real time. I can also view a summary in a graphical form, for example, for reporting purposes across the entire project portfolio, which supports management-level reporting and presents a wide range of data in a visually attractive way. If I enter such a project list, for example in the case of project condition data, I am able to see the information added by the project manager that describes the given condition, along with its change history and comments. I can also view the schedules of all projects within a given portfolio, for example with specific schedule details marked, in a consolidated view for all projects in my portfolio. Here I see aggregated schedule data for my project portfolio, including milestones, baseline plans, and related baseline information. From this level, I'm able to effectively manage multiple projects at once. Projects that belong to the same portfolio and are linked by a common goal or a specific function they serve within our organization. Similarly to a single project, we have a Budget tab here as well. In the Budget tab, I can see consolidated information regarding the budget execution across the various projects in the portfolio. Here I also have information about the baseline budget and any variances that occur. In the Risks tab, I can see a consolidated summary of all risks across my project portfolio, which enables effective portfolio risk management. If I want to obtain more detailed information about the projects, I can create reports not only on projects themselves, but also on tasks, milestones, budgets, or risks. These reports can be presented in various formats. For example, here I see a specific report that I have created before and use very often. It is a report of all active risks in the project, but I can also create, for example, a list of projects that are currently in progress and present them as a roadmap or a graphical summary. This summary is automatically generated and can, of course, be customized as needed. Thanks to the graphical format, important data about our projects is presented in an attractive and visually clear way. The last important thing is the Strategy tab, which allows us to track the implementation of our organization's strategic goals. I can appropriately describe these strategic goals, add indicators and projects that impact their implementation. And if I move on to the indicator section, I see a summary of all the metrics that show how our strategic goals are being achieved. This allows me to manage my organization at a very high level. Here, I can view the initial status when we define the strategic goal, the current data, and the target results for my indicators. The last important thing is licensing, which I would also like to mention to you. Users with a full license have access to all functionalities in the system. Standard users are typically project team members who can add attachments or comments to tasks and view the project schedule. These are people who work on projects daily but don't necessarily require access to more advanced system features and won't be administrators with broad permissions. We also offer the option to add free users, which is an attractive feature if you have many users whose role is limited to completing individual tasks. We can add an unlimited number of these users, who will have access only to their own tasks and will be able to indicate whether they have completed them or not. If you're interested in our system, I encourage you to get in touch with us and visit our website where you can find more details about the licensing options. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you successful work with our FlexiProject system.